I'd like to announce the quorum is present. The meeting is duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is 6:01 p.m. In order to maintain social distancing and other health protocols and at public gatherings, a limited number of staff and community members will be in-person attendees at this evening's board workshop. Following board members are in attendance: Tracy Miller, Dr. Buddy Bonner, Angie Cox, Christy Hassett, and Jenny Prosit. And Catherine Sells, I'm sorry. Board Vice President Allison Son is unable to attend this evening. I've asked Board Member Sells to lead us in prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for allowing all of us to get here and get here safely. I just pray for our district. I pray for the decisions that we make and the information that we hear, that our minds are open, our hearts are open, and that our questioning is wise and respectful. I also pray for Abram Drake, one of our students, and his sweet family. We pray for healing, and we pray that your hands will surround them with just immense love and peace at this time. I pray for Miss Lasan, who is traveling. I pray that traveling mercies on her, that she arrives back safe. And I just pray for our community. I pray that we find a way to heal, to become just a community that works together toward moving toward the best for all of our people, and especially our students here in LISD. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please join me for the pledges. Persons desiring to address the Board of Trustees must fill out a speaker's card. No presentation shall exceed 3 minutes. The board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included in the agenda. We have no speaker cards. Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, Board. We appreciate you being here. Also, before we get started, just want to express my appreciation for all the hard work by Brenda Nicholson and benefits by Melissa Cobb, Tim Chafin, Sheila Smith, and HR by Mark Youngs and Rosemary Trevino in finance. So a lot of work as Mr. Youngs comes up and gets ready. I just wanted to make sure and say a couple of statements that Mr. Miller's going to know that I'm going to say. So, but anyway, another statement I say every year is we know the heart of the board and are greatly appreciative of that as we enter these discussions about compensation. We also know, there's some hard decisions to make. And, it absolutely matters to me when you have a son and a daughter-in-law that are both teachers in LISD. It's hits you personally. At the same time, of course, there are some things that we all have to consider as we decide on compensation and other things. And so, it's always been my belief that you compensate the best you can when you can, and I think that's been the practice of our board. And hopefully when the staff understands when it comes time that you can't. This is Mr. Miller's favorite statement, but after you decide on compensation, it's also important that we understand that continues to flow through the budget. If you spend $10 million on compensation, that's $10 million every year. I do want the board to understand ESSER 3 money. We will reimburse allowable reimbursements of things that we spent we'll use ESSER 3 money to reimburse ourselves at least $10 million. It might be a little more, not much. That will help the bottom line of next year's budget. That's the only time it will help the bottom line is next year's budget, the 21-22 budget. So that's good news. Once again, that's only one-time money, but hey, you know, we absolutely need to utilize that. We know that we have $181 million in fund balance. We were able, due to a lot of reasons, to put $17 million in fund balance last year. One was House Bill 3 was new, figuring out all those formulas. Two, COVID hit. We saved some expenditures from March on. And we also know that the legislature, the last few sessions, is eyeing, you know, our savings account. And so there's no doubt that, you know, we have to at least consider the possibility of us, you know, spending some of that. Once again, not being negative Nelly, but, you know, fund balances are also really for rainy days. And, of course, the state's really good about that, you know, making sure we know that about their rainy day fund. There's always unknowns in budget, and I promise you, you know, when they move to current year values with House Bill 3 last session, I mean, it created even more unknowns for us in our budget development. One of the greater unknowns, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, is the world of virtual. You know, we have 900 students that their parents have said they want virtual, and we don't know when and if we decide that we can't offer it, which a lot of our colleague districts that wanted to offer it have already announced, even as recent as today, hey, we're not going to offer it. We'll make that decision probably in the next week and a half at the latest. But then the question is, how many of those 900 kids are we going to get back in person? I'm hoping it's 90%, 100%, but that's a big unknown as far as the ADA that they bring with them. And, of course, if they don't return for in-person, that also affects our recapture. And so, you know, tonight our job, what we've worked on, thanks to the work of the people I've talked about, is that we want to give you a lot of options. And I know I appreciate that y'all, you know, spend time looking at that. Luckily, we don't have to decide tonight. You'll be asked to do that next Monday. Please know that, you know, administration's given you a lot of options. By giving you a lot of options, we're not saying or even recommending to do all of them. We just wanted to give you some options. So with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Youngs to come up. And just a reminder, I've been asked by our technology folks to remind all of us that, hey, when you're not speaking, turn your microphone off. That way we won't have feedback. So with that, I'm going to shut up.
What's being passed out is just a quick history of revenues and expenses and ending fund balance in the general fund. If you all remember that school districts use fund accounting, meaning we put money into different buckets, and they're called funds. There's a food service fund and a debt service fund, and most of the money we spend is in the general fund. And so that's what this is a fund balance history of the general fund for the last 10, 11 years. If you spend more than you bring in revenue, you have a deficit. We had 2 years where we took money out of fund balance to look after the obligations of the district. You can see at the far left, 09-10, we had $120 million in fund balance that year. In 12-13, we spent a little bit more than we brought in. We took $5.5 million out of fund balance. 17-18, there are some fiscal issues there. We took 15 out and then added 10 back the next year, and then added 17 the following year, which is out to the far right, 1920. So the district has $181 million in fund balance in the general fund right now. That's $54 million higher than the 25% recommended in board policy. So we have strong fund balance. Strong fund balance in the general fund makes our bonds more attractive in the bond marketplace. We are an attractive client for our bonds. Our bonds always sell very well. What we're going to do now is just look at the two-pager you have. And if you turn to the page that talks about the original budget for 2021, and that's the budget that has $530 million in it as the total revenue. So that's the budget that you approved last August for our 2021 school year. So we have three different kinds of revenue: local, state, and federal. Local is largely the M&O tax at work, working with the property values to create that revenue. So if you look at that top line, we budgeted $454 million. We think we might end up at $432. So that's a $22 million shortfall, which is unusual, but last year was an unusual year. We have a number of our taxpayers that aren't paying their taxes. And we anticipated that, but we budgeted what we budgeted, and it's turning out that they're not paying as we thought they would. We're not sure whether that's homeowners or businesses or a combination of the two that are unable to pay, but they're not paying. They may pay in coming months. They will pay within a year or two, I suspect, because we have advisors who help us to collect the delinquents. State revenue is coming in about what we thought. Federal money is coming in a little stronger. This is largely SHAR's revenue that we budget conservatively. So we got $3 more million coming in from the federal government. SHAR's is reimbursement to the district for special ed services delivered to Medicaid-eligible children. So we anticipated revenue in the budget last August of $530. We think we might come in around $512. And that's a $19 million shortfall in revenue. Interestingly enough, we didn't spend like the budget either. If you look at Function 11, instruction, we budgeted $311. Looks like we probably spent about $301. That's $10 million of unspent money. That is not salary. That is supplies. That is contracted services. So I don't want you to be alarmed that we're underspending in the classroom. We're not. If you go down to Function 34, we're going to come in about $2 million light on transportation. There's fewer students on campus, and so there was fewer of them to transport. So we had fewer routes. Function 36, we spent a bit less there, $2 million, on athletics and fine arts. We just didn't have the year that we normally had with activities and travel. Number 51, plant maintenance. I've got a question mark beside this. I think we'll spend a little bit more than the 39. Not sure we're going to spend the whole 44 that we budgeted. Function 91 in red, recapture. We've left that as it is. We think it might be a little bit less because we have less revenue, but we haven't figured that out yet. So we're leaving that as is. So we budgeted a $12 million shortfall, and we think we might come in about $6 million, not the 12 that we anticipated. So that's a quick look backwards at the 2021 school year that we're just now starting to finish. Does anybody have any questions about the current year we're in?
And Mr. Youngs, while we project a potential $6 million shortfall, I mean, we expect that to be even a little better.
We
That's
hope
just
so.
the best we can tell at this time with several more months to go.
I would just remind us to pay attention to the red on the bottom, tentative, preliminary, and subject to change. These numbers are very fluid, and we're still haven't closed the year yet, obviously. That's true. So we might be less than a $6 million deficit. Any questions or observations about last year, the year we're in?
Thank you, Mr. Youngs. I appreciate it, and being good stewards of the district's money as well. So just hypothetically thinking, let's say we didn't have COVID and everything was fantastic and didn't have all of that. Just hypothetically, these numbers probably would reflect more on the budgeted side. Am I correct on that?
Absent COVID, we would have had more revenue, and we would have spent more on activities.
Okay, so would we be looking more at the 12 million? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. That's what I wanted to know.
Yep. Understood.
Ms. Hazard?
It's not a very big decrease, but social work decreased a little bit. Do you know why? I mean, it's not much. It's just this is a year we.
I'd have to look into that particularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious because we needed services for students. This
We're not
crazy year.
finished with the year yet, so
Maybe
a lot
it's-
might happen there.
Yeah, this isn't, I mean, we can look into specifics. That's not really the purpose of.
No, I'm just curious because
Yeah.
of crazy COVID. And then health services, it's increased a little bit. So is that more supplies and things because staffing is okay?
Yep.
Can you just explain for those listening the correlation between the increase in the recapture even when our revenue has declined? In your best ability.
Certainly. I'm going to start with very basics. As school districts have rising values, they get less state money. It's always a combination of the two. And so if you're in a district that has rising values, more houses getting built, more commercial buildings, more industrial, you get less state money. There's always a combination of the two. You reach a point if your values keep growing, and it's measured per student. And about $550 million per student is when you start to get into recapture. We're way north of that. The problem that Lewisville has is that we have rising values, which is nice, but our enrollment's not growing the same as the values are growing. And so under the current funding formulas, rising values, enrollment being flat, the state will take more. Does that answer it? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
I want to reiterate that we really won't know until 90 days after August 31st because that's when we audit our year. So these are projections.
They are. They're
I
our best
appreciate that.
guess.
So I want to go back and just reiterate for this year's budget, our collection rate was 100%, correct? And what was the enrollment? And I know that we got some grace from the state on that, but what was the enrollment that we did this budget on?
I don't have
You
that
don't know.
number right here,
Okay.
but it was in the high 40s, the
Okay.
mid to high 40s.
That's all.
Good question.
Thank you for that great definition of recapture.
Ms. Prosnick, I do need to remind you that it's based on ADA too. So, I mean, if you have an enrollment of
But the budget was based,
49,000,
the budget was based on
then you
that.
take that times the attendance
I didn't use the
rate
correct
and-
terminology.
Yeah.
What the budget was based
Yeah.
on for ADA.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I should have
No, that's fine.
clarified.
That's right.
I figured we're all speaking the same language, so.
But
yeah.
last fall, we had less children show up. And so that's what the hold harmless is all about, but we don't need to go there.
Right.
So again, thank you for that great definition of recapture. That's a very difficult thing for the public to understand. I appreciate the clarity there. Really then, with the assessed values rising and enrollment stable, bumping up and down a little bit, maybe
Yep.
even declining, the best solution for that is to get more kiddos in here, correct?
The only way to get more money into a school district is to have more children enrolled.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be painfully obvious, but I just wanted to clarify that that's the solution to that problem, correct?
Yeah, let's have more children.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and Dr. Bonner, more kids, even though you're going to still pay recapture, the recapture will be less because it's the amount of property value per student, and so it will be less the more students.
We need to get below $514,000 a kid, right?
It's not going to happen.
Well,
Yeah.
but that's the goal, right?
That's the goal.
Okay.
Anything else on this past year? If you'll turn the page, we'll take a look at next year, and we'll compare it to the budget that the board adopted for the 2021 school year. So at the top, we have property tax revenue. With the increased values that the appraisal district has told us about, we think that property tax revenue will increase. There should be less of a COVID impact as we move forward. State revenue, you can see, is going down by $18 million. And it's attributable to what I said earlier about defining recapture. As values go up, we get less state money, and that's just what's happening here. We get $35 million of new property tax revenue. 18 million of that goes away with less state money. You'll see a line item there, 5,800. That's TRS on behalf. That is revenue that comes into the district, and it's an accounting flow through, goes right back out in payroll. So we have to show it as revenue, but it's an expenditure as well. So it's $1 in and $1 back out again. So it gets spent up and down all the functions below. We get some more federal revenue, and we're going to be conservative there as well. So we think $554 million next year compared to $530. So an increase of about $24 million. Any questions on that before I go down and start spending it? Please.
And the TRS on behalf, didn't the state increase our share this year?
TRS on behalf is just a flow through. We have to show it as revenue now, but it
Right.
gets spent all the way down function 11, 12, 13, all the way to the bottom.
I remember
So-
the bill that was going to increase our portion and basically remove part of the state. Did that not
Are you
make it?
talking healthcare or are you talking retirement?
TRS on behalf. I thought it was, never mind.
If it goes up, it'll just be part of the payroll burden. Okay. All right, let's start to...
I'm sorry, I had a quick
Sure.
question. And I guarantee you're probably going to talk about it later, but I just want to understand, for under federal revenue, we are not showing any of the ESSER money in that
Not yet.
category because, okay.
We're in the process of taking stakeholder input. We haven't even, there's lots of steps in that application process.
So my question is, will that, and I realize this is a draft, will that number, I'm assuming, would increase?
Let's,
Okay, I'll
if
be
you'll hold
patient.
that thought,
I will be patient.
if you,
Yeah.
hold that thought.
Ms. Brodnick, we're not for sure exactly where we'll have to show that on this, but we'll absolutely ultimately show it, because as I said, it's going to help our bottom line for next year.
Just an observation about ESSER. I have never seen a grant like this before that looks backwards and forwards at the same time. We get to look backwards to the 2021 school year that we're starting to close and pick expenditures that we want to reimburse ourselves for. And we get to look forward to how to figure out how to address learning loss and all the other issues related to COVID. And so this is a very unusual grant that looks backwards and forwards at the same time. So the backwards piece we'll apply for, get the money probably this fall sometime. And that'll be money for the district in the next fiscal year. Okay? That making sense?
Yeah, and actually, we can go back even to the previous fiscal year, because we can go back to March of 2020 to reimburse some items, and we will do that, so.
So let's spend the $554 million we anticipate coming in revenue. Function 11, instruction. This is in the classroom money. We've increased our budget there by about $9 million. Function 12 and 13 is still instructional, and function 21 is instructional leadership, and that's in this building. So the increase there is about $284. The next line down, 23, is school leadership. That's principals, assistant principals, their clerical support on campus. So the increase in the admin building is $284. The increase on campus is about $1.1 million. Line 31, or Function 31, we anticipate spending $1.5 million extra than we did this year. And we had talked about that as a school district and as a board a number of times about spending more resources in the guidance and the counseling area. Line 41 is the general administration. That goes up about $500,000, and that largely has to do with us trying to be compliant with local, state, and federal law and regulations attendant to all the grants that we have. If you go down to 91, this is the recapture business. You'll notice it going up from $32 million this year to $44 million next year. That's attributable, again, to the increased values that we're getting from the Denton County Appraisal District. So a total expenditure in the coming year of $571 million against revenue of $554 for a deficit of $17 million. Now, we're anticipating about $10 million of ESSER money coming in, and how we book that will be up to the accountants and the auditors, but that $10 million would reduce the 17 down to 7. So the deficit would be $7 million, assuming all the numbers happen like I'm presenting them. The assumptions underlying the budget projection is it assumes a 2% raise. Each percent is roughly equivalent to $3.5 million. Something else to remember is that the ESSER money is one-time money. That's for next year. We can spend it over 2 years, and we may end up doing that. But remember, this ESSER money isn't routine revenue to the district over and over and over again. It's one-time money. So that's a quick look at next year, and let's talk. Let's ask questions.
Thank you, Mr. Young. So in this budget, do you have included just the what if for the virtual learning, some of the items we might need?
Nope.
Well, let me.
We haven't heard from Austin yet on that.
Well, let me interject. So all the types of things like virtual software, even the staff are virtual, we are planning to use ESSER money if that comes through. So that's not going to hit our budget as far as virtual.
No, but
that will be ESSER money.
Right, but it takes away from what he's saying, that
No,
this will look more
no.
like, no, but he said it will look like more like 7 million if we use the ESSER money.
No, that money, that $10 million is money we are being reimbursed for expenditures we've already used. Remember, there's a total of $37.5 million. We're going to reimburse ourselves about $10 million and use the $7.5 million or more on learning loss and about $20 million on recurring costs, things like, for instance, paying for reading academies. Virtual, I think, was like $5 million if virtual happens. If not, we'll refocus. But that won't touch the $10 million at all. So
That $10 million is from looking back. The other is from looking forward. Does that help? Other questions?
Mrs. Hazzett? You want to wait? Okay. Mrs. Sells?
Did we not have any students in the alternative education program at the beginning of the school year? We were zeroed out on the other side, but then it's back.
I don't know the answer to that. Dr. Rapp?
We haven't had to pay anything for the students that we've had there this year. So
Okay. I thought I had asked and knew that there were students. I just didn't know. Is that just because we haven't been billed or because we won't have to pay? Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to ask my same two questions.
Sure.
What's the collection rate for this budget?
About 95, 96%.
Okay. And then,
Now, I should hasten to just add, normally it's very near 100,
right.
so it's the COVID effect,
So we did 96% collection rate for,
looking backwards.
no, I'm talking about the one for next year that you have in front of us.
Next year is full at
You have it at 100? That's at 100% collection rate? Okay. And right now, we're sitting at 96%-ish.
ish.
And then what is the enrollment that was assumed, the ADA, for next year's budget?
The same
The same?
46.5.
Okay. So the same as last year's?
Flat.
And then, I'm going to kind of piggyback on Mrs. Cox's question, because and we're going to talk about it in a bit, you have 22 employees in the virtual academy, and I understand that you want to use ESSER funds for that, but what if we don't do the virtual academy? The question does become, are they included in this budget?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ms. Prosnick, and thanks to the work of HR. One, we started with 43 employees for elementary alone earmarked for virtual. When we got the latest numbers of virtual, and it was 900 instead of the original 1,900 that expressed interest, we changed and went from 43 to 20. So those 23 we're using to plug in existing open positions. We'll do the same with the 20 earmarked as virtual. So it won't be 20 extra people that we didn't need. It's just 20 positions that we won't have to fill that are open. We'll fill with internal candidates that will shift back from the virtual elementary realm. Does that make sense? Okay.
I figured that's what it was, but to kind of piggyback on what Ms. Cox had said, because we had talked about it.
Okay, just a follow-up question with that. So then are these principals having to put those positions on hold because we're waiting? So not to hire anybody because we'll need to fill those positions with those people, not hire?
I'm sorry. Ms. Cox, there's plenty of positions open, and I promise you the principals are working diligently, and HR's working diligently. So they're not waiting on us. It's just that there's enough. I mean, the good thing about being an organization like Lewisville ISD is there's enough turnover that we can do that. If we were a small school district, yeah, we'd be in trouble. We're not in trouble as far as that. So.
And then one more question, which is something the board had asked for. I just want to confirm, in this counseling budget, we had asked for increase in counselor on our campuses. Is that included already to add those added counselors?
Yes.
You still on hold, Hanson? Okay. Now, I'll take up some airtime here. Couple things. One, thanks, Mr. Youngs, for this, and thanks for some of your time today to help me understand some of the issues. One, I wanted to just clarify, when you say they use the word 11, line 11, instruction, and kind of relate that to the classroom, that's a very narrow definition of the classroom. They're really about 8 different lines that go to the classroom. And so in my quick math, and I was trying to do math here, and Jamie do math, I mean, that comes up to about $370 million or so, my rough math and my wrong reading glasses for my phone. But that's what goes to the classroom. And historically,
Can I
yeah.
ask you to time out for a second?
Yeah.
When we go down to line 23, function 23,
Okay.
that is principals, assistant principals, and their clerical support. That's not in the classroom, but it is on campus.
Yeah.
So that broader look that you and I were talking about is on campus, not necessarily in the classroom.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay.
But in a corporate sense, what corporations will do is provide an overhead function. So it's an allocation. So I've got 600 kids. I've got this amount of staff at these are the levels. I've got this amount of my facilities. And so your allocations are resident in those items. Okay.
Yes.
And so in other words, you don't have a classroom without a principal. As far as I know,
That's right.
we don't have that happening in LISD.
Yep.
And I'm not aware that we have schools that don't have assistant principals or counselors or bookkeepers.
Yep.
Those things. And so just a fundamental point that when we look at instruction, right, that it's a broader set of codes, particularly 11, 12, 13, 21, 23, 31, 32,
Yep.
33, 36, and 95.
Yep.
Those would be
On
around
campus.
instruction on campus.
Absolutely.
Right? And administration would be separate from that, and some salary information would be, payroll would be separate. But
Yep.
we perform pretty well there against our peers and nears is really the point I want to make. Second thing is, relative to our peers and nears, we have been blessed with a healthy fund balance. In fact, I think when the three of us came on, it's exceeded a little more for Ms. Cox, but it's up 26 million, probably 30 maybe for her, and everybody's benefited and contributed to that. I think people forget, and I'm saying this for posterity and for the audience, that we are one of the very few districts that did not get enticed into the pressure from the legislature and the Education Committee to do a TRE as quickly as possible. And at the time, I'm going to use simple numbers, at the time before compression, it would have been $1.04 to $1.13. Okay?
$1.04 to $1.17, actually.
17, I'm sorry, 13 cents.
Yeah.
So over 11% tax increase. And so when you look at the amount of money that they have to do the job and the product, it's pretty good stuff. So one can't look at, well, what's your expending a number 11 and number of students, and then do a correlation of peers and nears. You have to look at all of these elements. And we have consistently, for our taxpayers and for our product, our community, done it with less revenue coming in and not gone to the taxpayers and asked them to bear that, an additional burden on that. Now, I know that $1.04 is not on my tax bill, right? So I can't speak to that compression. Maybe Jenny or Christy or somebody else can, but just know, I think it's worth noting. Being repetitious like Dr. Rogers is on some of his, we run at a lean level and have always done so and not gone and put that pressure on the taxpayers. The places where we've done that over the last several years, 2010 notwithstanding on TRE, around facilities, items that are capital type items, and we have asked for support from the community there, but done so on 20-year bonds and repayment. Second thing is, so I think I covered the kind of the instructional piece for the rooms, the tax rate, and then, so when you're talking the 17, it's not in here, but you're showing 17, but it's really going to be 7. At the end of the day, you think you're going to get 10, so it's going to be 7. And we could scratch that and say probably going to be -7, until we start spending money on salaries.
That is correct, assuming a 2% bump. If I can make just an observation, the M&O tax rate next year will go down because the state sets it for us. And as our values go up, they're going to set that M&O rate so we get a 2.5% increase in overall revenue. That's House Bill 3 at work. So heads up to our taxpayers, their M&O rate's going down next year. So their tax bill going up is attributable to the increase in value, not the school tax.
Oh, well, excellent, Ms. Hassett.
Pain in the. You said earlier to Ms. Prosnick that we're assuming a 46.5 ADA. So if it comes in more, we'll receive more funding and recapture will go down.
Correct.
If that's what we're receiving now, are we not assuming that we're going to get some of those kindergarten munchkins and
Say again?
the kindergarten munchkins who didn't show up this year? Are we not assuming that we'll get some of those back
We
this
are
year?
assuming we'll get about half of them back.
About half of them?
But the other good thing is that if we don't have the increase in value, then that recapture doesn't happen either. And for last year, with less revenue, we might not have the recapture that we budgeted either. So there's still some flex in these numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and Ms. Hassett, just as Mr. Young's stated early on, we're very conservative on those numbers. We absolutely expect to get more students back after COVID. We're also, though, graduating larger classes than ever, so we're graduating large classes of seniors and yet enrolling smaller classes of kindergartners, first grade. So, I mean, so that's where the numbers work.
Any other questions, or you want to let, can we
We're ready
recall Mr. Youngs if we need to?
Absolutely. And,
Okay,
and-
I think we're going to turn it over to the person of the hour.
yeah.
So before
Not that
I-
you're not, but you are a good warm-up, so
So, and while
I
we
think a
are-
lot of people aren't here to hear you speak tonight. I'm just being fair.
So before I leave,
We
I just want to thank Rosemary and her team. They're the folks that are making all this happen. Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you, ladies, very much, as usual. Thank you.
Okay, and even though I'm not the person of the hour, we are going to discuss, our main topic is compensation, while Brenda and Sheila and Tim come up. I do want to, there were a lot of questions about, virtual, and we understand that. And so, just a little sort of support for what I talked about. So give you an example. Originally, we had 43 teachers for elementary school virtual. Now we have 23. So all these numbers continue to go down because of the 900 versus 1,900 that originally filled out the survey. You see the new expenses, too, for program software and so on, manipulatives. We've decreased those amounts based on that 900. As I said earlier, I plan to make a decision on virtual after talking to the commissioner with Representative Parker Monday afternoon. I expressed, as many others have, our concerns with the failure of House Bill 1468. And he, said there were still a few options, and that, he thought it was premature to totally scrap the idea until a week from tomorrow, which is his next. And so Dr. Rapp and I have talked with a lot of our folks internally that have poured their heart and souls into this, and so we're going to wait until at least a week from tomorrow to decide. We have notified parents that did sign up for virtual, as I think the board's aware that, hey, legislation didn't pass, and we're getting ready, and we're working on giving you an in-person schedule, and that's the issue. But so all this money, which if you look up there, is still $3.4 million, which is all ESSER 3 funded. Absolutely, if we don't have a virtual program, most of that, except possibly the expansion of Virtual Learning Academy for high school, which we still want to do anyway, will be used for something else. So we wanted to sort of update the board on that item before we move forward.
I'd just like to add, that's one of the things I had on my paper here. This may not be everybody's thinking, but I think we can have a lot of conversations about virtual, and here's the deal. Unless someone has come up with a way that the commissioner can authorize that to happen before we need to do our staffing, I think we have to be prepared quickly, like soon, to say we're not going to have virtual. And the reality of it is, if they don't get together, or if they've not already come up with a thing that they think they can approve, we're not going to have it. And we'll spend a lot of time at every meeting talking about, do we think they're going to have virtual?
Yeah, Mr. Miller, we're not going to spend any more time talking about that because we'll know a week from tomorrow, and we only have one more meeting, and we're not going to talk about virtual Monday night. So I promise you, we're not afraid. I'm not afraid to pull the trigger, but we've gone this far. Why not wait one more week for those 900 parents that want it? I think I said 2 nights ago, I think it's said as that, but I'm going to take the commissioner at his word that at least we should. I'm going to take the commissioner at his word that at least we should wait one more week, and that's what I plan to do.
And what day is that next week?
That's a week from tomorrow.
A week from
That's the
tomorrow, so we will
17th.
have met.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, before we get started with numbers, I too want to take just a minute like Mark did and say the numbers and information I'm presenting to you tonight are certainly teamwork. Several of our team in HR is here tonight. Tim and Brenda are here to present different pieces. But in the audience tonight as well is Melissa Cobb, whom we would not function without all of the great things she does. But additionally, Sharon Heyer, Deanne Angonia, and Gail Prince are here, and the role they play in taking our decisions that we're using and making those personal calls to all of the employees that we're offering positions to and saying welcome to LISD. They're very interested in this conversation, and I just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge them and all the work that they're doing and say thank you for that work. So one of the things that we've done is we moved to a different third-party administrator, or we are in the process of moving, and we've moved to FBS. Brenda and her team and I have been meeting weekly with FBS for several weeks now, a couple of months now. And I would like to say I've put a detailed packet for the board in your folders. So for those of you that like the detail on the savings for our employees at every level, it's there for you to see. The exciting thing about that information is when you flip through there, all of the numbers that you see in green are all savings for our employees. And you will see a lot of green numbers, and even some of them are small monthly amounts, some are larger monthly amounts. But what we've been able to do with Kobe James and his team, and through Brenda's hard work with them, is create plans that are offering more options for our staff, better plans at a cost savings for our staff. So those details are in your packet, but we're really excited about that plan. Brenda is going to walk through just some highlights of the benefits plan with you, but I just wanted to share that piece of information.
Good evening, board members. As Sheila said, we have been working very diligently with FBS. We meet weekly. We have multiple calls every week with them. They've been great at going out and being very proactive in getting bids for us that would improve the benefits for our employees. In most cases, they have improved and had lower rates. Some of them are lower and improved rates. So we're really excited about that. And the slide that you have in front of you shows one or a couple of the areas, but dental at $74.85 annual savings, that's just for an employee. That's what they would save per year with the new plan, and it's better benefits. And a lot of our staff do participate in the dental, so we were glad about that. And disability and critical illness will be with the same company, and they will save over $100 annually on those benefits. So that's a really good savings for them. And again, enhanced plans on that. A great thing for people, because we're starting over this year with different life insurance companies and a new TPA, employees will be able to go in and select life insurance if they haven't before, and they're guaranteed issue. So even if they've taken $5,000 or $10,000 or something, and they qualify to put more life insurance out there, then they don't have to answer those questions and do an application. So this is a really great benefit for them as well, and it also has lower rates. So this next slide, you can see that we have 69% of our current staff who participate in the benefits. Most of them are enrolled in the Active Care HD. Again, it's a 69% of the participating employees take the Active Care 1 HD. We were late getting our rates in, but we've got those now. There were an increase in those, and we'll go over that as well. But I wanted you to see on the Active Care HD, that used to be our lowest plan, lowest premium plan. Last year they introduced one that was a little bit less in premium, but I didn't show that one on here because the majority of our employees still take this one, and I wanted you to see how that breakdown looked. So, whoops, we missed one. Yeah. Are we driving? Yeah. Y'all are confusing me. Okay, so this is where I'm showing you the rates compared to last year on that Active Care 1 HD plan. The first column there shows last year's rates, and then the new rate at the employee cost. That's after the district's contribution, and you can see the district's contribution there in the next column. And then next column over is the total premium. And I want to remind you that TRS only requires $225 a month, and we're well above that. And then the final column shows the additional cost to the employee by month and annually as well. So this next slide does show you where we are on our district contribution compared to some of the other area school districts. It's all over the place, really. We did go out and get the information for 2 or 3 times this many school districts, and these are really our competitor districts. So I wanted you to be able to see that as well.
So on the next slide, you can see what we've given, the information we've given you here is, for a moment, we're just saying if we were to do a 2% increase for our employees, then if we did that 2% increase, the average teacher, once you take into consideration what our insurance premiums are going up, if you look at a teacher with their average salary being $61,670, and if we were to do a 2% increase, that would mean that they would have a $1,223 salary increase. But once again, if we took into impact what our health insurance premiums are doing, that would net an $839 raise. So one that I would just like to draw your attention to, we're going to talk about this group later, is our instructional support staff. Once you factor in the premium insurance for that group, their net increase, if we were to do a 2% raise and nothing more, would be $121 for the year.
Okay, so this is my part. So we'll as we work through this presentation, there's going to be considerations. And, you know, we've talked about this year after year as far as whether or not the district should or could put more money towards the district contribution towards benefits and the rationale, pros and cons. We've always thought in most cases, if you're going to give more money, to do it in salary. And that is because if you contribute more to health insurance, that is not TRS eligible. All right, and so
Dr. Rogers, we're going to take a break to deal with some technical issues at 6:54 p.m.
okay.
All right, welcome back at 7:14. We're back in session. We took care of the gremlins. They're all out of here now, so we're going to jump right back into it. Dr. Rogers, you were completing a statement when I interrupted you and asked Ms. Smith to stop. So do you remember what that was, or do you just want to let her take over?
No, I remember what it was.
It carries over every year?
Yeah, no, this is, we need to hear your input on whether or not you want to consider raising the district's contribution, which, as we said, you know, is $326 or higher, which is over $100 more than the state requirement. You saw where we compare. We are very comparable to other districts. And as I said, you know, in the past, my recommendation, I think for a long time, has been that if we're going to spend money, put it in to salaries or something that's TRS eligible. And so, but we'd like to hear your input, before we move forward.
I just wanted to add, just for reference, if you were to raise it by $10, right now we have roughly 4,500 people that take our insurance, so that would increase by $542,000 if we were to choose to raise the district contribution by $10 a month, just for you to have a point of reference.
And remember, not quite 70% of our employees take the benefits, so we're not really affecting 30% of our employees from the start.
What I'd like to do, if it's all right, is we've got really 6 items we're considering here. All are associated to compensation. And they're based on inputs from the board, so I tried to spend some time with Ms. Smith today as we kind of looked at it. So I think if you listen to what she has to say in the categories, write down your notes in the categories. We'll give you a summary of the categories, not the benefits, and then we can ask questions. It might give you a better context. So, for example, it sounds good. Let's add a contribution to TRS, right? Well, there's some other things here that you might change your mind if you look at the use cases. I guess would that be a better way to do it? Okay.
Okay, so on the next slide, I'm just basically pointing out to you, many times we talk about market and how we rate in the market. Anytime we use the language about our competitive market, we are always using these 20 districts that have been determined as our market for any of those comparisons. And so I just wanted you to have that information. On the next slide, you'll see that currently, this is all about first-year teacher salary. So right now, our beginning year teachers' starting salary is $55,385. If the board were to approve a 2% from the midpoint raise, that would raise our beginning year teacher's salary to $56,295. And obviously, if you were to give a 3% raise, it would increase that starting salary to $56,925. I will tell you that regardless of whether you're looking at the 2% or the 3%, our starting year teacher salary is in market. We're very competitive with other districts. Determining between the 2 and the 3% does not change whether we are or are not in market. Just for reference, TASB does a preliminary survey of districts to say, hey, what are you thinking about doing in terms of an increase? That survey is done in February. At that time, all of the districts in Region 10 and 11 reported that they were considering a 2% raise, and districts with 25,000 or more students were also considering a 2%. I would like to point out that was before ESSER funds existed, but that's where they were. So then if you look at just district comparisons of salary increases, I've tried to list a few of our districts here that are in our market and where we know they are standing with increases. So you can look down through and see that most everybody's considering a 2%. Frisco is considering a 3%. If you notice on both Denton and Plano, they have both an employee retention payment. Denton has already passed theirs to be a $500 retention payment. Plano hasn't determined an amount, but they are considering an employee retention payment. The next slide just breaks down for you, historically, for the past 5 years, what types of increases we have provided to our district. So you can see over the past 5 years, we've given everything from a 3% to a 2%. You can tell back in 2019, 2020, it looks a little bit different. That is because of House Bill 3 and meeting the requirements of House Bill 3 required us to have the different tiers. And then on the far right is just a reminder as to what we did this past year.
Okay, and this is just an overall view of, and you can see that thanks to the work of Mr. Chafin added with a 2% or a 3%, and really the thing to look at here is where we are within the marketplace according to what percentage of raise. You know, later you're going to be asked if you want to consider that 10 to 15-year realm, because as you see, they're the group that's really lagging a little bit. And I know, House Bill 3 asked us to, consider putting more money towards teachers, one that was mandated, but then the board, if you, go back a slide, the board gave 16-plus year experienced teachers a 1% larger raise than those, 0 to 5. So that's just something to look at as you discuss later. And so that's one of the questions that, and Mr. Miller's right, some of this is tied together, and so we can certainly discuss that later, whether or not you want to make that adjustment or not. If you want to adjust those teachers 10 to 15 years, it's about $1.4 million. Okay. And
Dr. Rogers, if I could just add real quick, if in order to make that adjustment, if you do the 5 to 10, he's totally correct, it's about 1.4. I was asked earlier today about our retention, so I just think this is a good point to say. When you look at our turnover rate with teachers, it is right in between years, about years 7 and 15. If I put a chart in your folder, I do think it's worth noting that that is where our highest turnover rate also lies. So I think as you consider this question tonight, that's a piece of information you might want to consider as well. So the next slide is the question that a lot of us are waiting on tonight, I'm sure. And that is, what do we want to consider in terms of a salary increase? I went ahead, although I know, Mr. Miller, you told me on Monday we didn't need to put the 1% on there. I respectively left it there just so everybody can understand 1% of the midpoint is roughly a $3.5 million increase to our budget. And so when we look at a 2% or a 3%, it's all easy math from that point as long as you know what a 1% from the midpoint is. But a 2% would cost roughly $7 million, and a 3% would be about $10.5 million add to the budget.
so consideration number 3 then, of course, is what percent of a raise does the board want to give? And of course, reminder, all this won't be approved until next Monday. So that's the third one. So Ms. Smith?
So then the next piece for you to consider is the retention payment. This year we called that a one-time lump sum payment. If you remember, we gave that out to teachers who had 20 or more years of experience. They got $1,000. Everyone else got a $750, and we gave that out. That was delivered in November. I will point out to you that that money does not impact TRS, so that is certainly something to consider. The other piece to a retention payment like this, or a one-time payment, is it also doesn't handcuff the board to this amount being in the budget as a recurring amount year after year. So this is something that you can look at for 21-22, but does not commit you beyond that if you have this type of payment. I labeled it this year as a retention payment, honestly, because several districts are calling it that are considering it. So I just think carrying it forward as a one-time lump sum payment for 2 consecutive years does away with one time. So that's why it's labeled as it is.
Yeah, and let me just say, one of the pros of doing a one-time retention, whatever you label it, is it does benefit those lower on the pay scale better. I mean, those aides, that $500 or whatever, that's a big deal to them. not that it's not a big deal to everyone. You know, the one concern, whatever you label it, is how many times do you do this that then it becomes the expectation? And so that's a little bit of concern that we talked about even last year. So that's another consideration.
The next piece we're going to walk you through is in our instructional support proposal. If you all remember, a couple of months ago, there was some question about our IS, our instructional support staff. And Tim is going to walk you through this information, but I just want to say, one, you have in your folders the entire pay grade. I believe one of you asked me for that on Monday night, so I've provided that for you. And Tim, why don't you walk them through the proposal?
Yeah,
Sure.
and Tim, let me just make sure, too, that the board understands. One of the greatest concerns that I think campus principals face is when these different pay grades, so I'm a classroom instructional support aide, and yet I can slide over and get a raise by becoming a library aide. You know, all these different pay scales for these campus support positions. You know, we need people in the classroom, and so that's the thing that really sort of drove this discussion. So,
Well, and I'll add, because I learned this from Mrs. Smith today, I don't have any other insights on the audit, but one of the recommendations from the audit was that we bring TASB back in to do a salary audit, and I know Buddy was a fan of doing this. This was done prior to us coming on the board, I think. I didn't know that Gibson had recommended it, but I think the timing is good, and hopefully it'll address some of the things for the next go-around for you guys.
Well, as Sheila mentioned, in 1920, the self-contained support group did receive that adjustment. So we brought them up well above the 100% of the market. As we're looking at the other pay grades, 32 and 33 do need to be adjusted. They are below 100% of the market. Pay grade 34 is already there, slightly above 100%. So one of our thoughts is if we combine those together to also address what Dr. Rogers mentioned, it gives some more flexibility there on the campus as well, with everyone at a $15 rate, and bring all of those into one single pay grade. And the pay grade sheets that you have there from the IS can give you the specific job titles, and each of those you'd see how they would combine.
I'm sorry, Tim, could you repeat what pay grades you want to combine? Is it 32, 33, and 34?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
32, 33, 34. And then the next page indicates what those costs would be. Across the top, what I've put in there is the current starting rate for each of those pay grades in 32 and 33. Then a few options if we were to bring that minimum up to $14, $14.50, or $15. If we do this and combine all of these grades together, the lower right-hand column of $855,000 would be the cost. And that would put all of those positions that you see starting at $15 an hour.
and Tim, these employees would get that bump, whatever the decision is, plus whatever percentage raise.
That's correct. This does not include the percentage raise. This is just to get them to the market rates.
So, consideration number 5 is, is that something that the board wants to consider doing? And there's several options if that's the case. So
the next question that was asked of me was to discuss and bring some numbers about advanced degree stipends. On the chart, you can see that currently Lewisville pays $1,000 for a master's degree and then an additional $1,200 for a doctorate, which would total $2,200 if a person had both their master's and their doctorate. You can see the breakdown and information of other districts. So you can look at the information and you can see that while we are a little bit below the market in this area, my job is to bring you that information. I want to say to you, as you consider the possibility of raising this, there are a couple of things that I just think you need to keep in mind. If we were to look at just raising the master's degree stipend, $1,500, $1,800, $2,000, if you wanted to consider those things, our teachers typically move. If they want to advance into another position, typically that's either in a counselor position or an assistant principal position. And right now, if you look at a teacher's pay and they have these stipends and they're wanting to move into those positions, there's only about a 3% increase in salary from a counselor or an assistant principal position to a teacher having those stipends. If you raise that stipend to, say, $1,500, you're closing that gap even further. And so that action would then quite possibly set up a situation where you have a teacher with their degree wanting to move to become a counselor or an assistant principal, and they're actually looking at a cut in their pay because of the stipend factor. So it's just a piece of information I want you to consider, because the only way to solve that is then to make a lot of adjustments on the AP scale that would not be financially possible.
Yeah, and let me just add, really the rationale for, and this, I'm sure Dr. Bonner may have even more history. The rationale for us, at least, not moving forward with this is the majority of these people with masters and doctorates are administrators. And so, there's already a gap, or counselors, as Sheila said, but so you would be rewarding people for a master's no matter whether it's in something that's educational or not. So if you wanted to do something, you might want to restrict it to only classroom teachers, but then it creates the problem that Ms. Smith talked about.
I will say, if you wanted to raise it to a master's to $1,500, that would cost $587,500. It basically costs $117,500 for every $100 that you would want to raise it.
So that's consideration number 6.
So then the next piece is just, if you remember, about this time last year, I brought you information about substitute pay. And at that time, you asked me to make substitute pay a part of the annual process for us to review. I forget many things, but I did not forget that. So we're looking at substitute pay. Oops. Okay, so I've just listed out our sub pay rate for you. You can see Lewisville at the top. Thank you to the board for raising our rates last year. I will say you can look at this now and know that I don't recommend making any changes to our sub rates. Our sub rates are still very competitive, and I think right now where we're sitting is in a good place, but there are the comparison numbers. Additionally, I wanted to mention our permanent subs, because I think our permanent subs were a huge impact positively on our district this year. I gave you bad information on a chart a couple of months ago when we reported that the permanent substitutes cost us $2.5 million, and that actually isn't true, because obviously we would have had a sub in that position. So the additional cost actually amounted to $590,000. It's what it is costing us to have our permanent subs on our campus. And while I would not speak for our principals, I definitely know we've heard a lot of positive comments from our principals about the void they feel on, in absences.
And I think the board's already been made aware. That is something that we plan to continue forward. It is part of the budget that you've seen. And we would have to pay a sub if we could fill the rate. It's, of course, this year during COVID, it was 75%, but it is about $600,000 cost adjustment for permanent subs at all of our campuses. Mr. Miller, we're ready for discussion, and then we'll cover this last slide later.
Okay, here's what I put in front of you. This is just to kind of help guide you with what you heard in a summary level. It does not include the, yeah, yeah. It does not include the TRS contribution, which I think she said was 542,000. If he did $10, okay. So what this is just, as I sat down with Mark then and looked at, this is if you paid everything out, okay? So this is, if you paid the raise, it's 3.5, the extra percent. So Mark's built his budget on 2%. So I asked him if he would adjust his budget with some options, and he said no. But he agreed that he would write down, this is what the impact would be on his budget. So he typed this up, and this is just for discussion. The raise is 3.5%. The bump in instructional support, I think this is the area, Angie, I think this is where we were talking about the $15 an hour stuff in the past. The market adjustment, which we've done a market adjustment before, but to market adjust these two to get them in the 100%, I think they're 10 to 15 ranges. The retention bonus, now understand this 6.6 million just is simple math. It's 1,000 times all employees. So it doesn't mean that we need to do that. It could be tiered. It needs some research, but that's what that is. And then the hard to fill, I think this is answering Mrs. Cox's question the other night. These are BIC teachers, right?
Yes, so one thought that I had, you asked me the question the other night about our hardest to fill area, and I will tell you that I will totally believe that's in our BIC classrooms, just because of the challenges that those teachers have. And so, Mr. Miller asked me to think big, and so I said to him, one thing we could look at, and Dr. Rogers and the leadership team has talked about this, is could we have some type of signing bonus or some type of retention tied just to a stipend for a BIC classroom? And we could look at that many ways. There's a lot of different ways to break that down. I would assure you, if we called it a signing bonus, I totally believe you only give a very small part of that in the beginning and give the majority of that stipend at the end when they've successfully completed that year. But I just think that is an area that we're really struggling. And if we set that group aside and offered something just for that group, that's 65 teachers, that might be money well spent.
So, Ms. Smith, just a clarification question for me. Where does the 1.8 million come from then, if we're talking about 65?
60 times 3.
Well, that is $195,000. If we were to do a $3,000, I'm not for sure where that number came from, but if we were to do a $3,000 signing bonus or stipend additional for BIC, that would cost us about $195,000.
So you can take the 1.8 million number and scratch it out and make it 200,000. I'd have to go back in my notes and see why that was the case, but
I do have a question.
It changes that
For your
substantially.
bonuses, that is not for the BIC aides, that's not for the instructional support, that is only for a BIC teacher. Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
And it's the 65, is that all of the BIC teachers? So that would be BIC teachers that are employed now would then get that.
Absolutely. If we
As
looked at doing
well as new
something that
hires.
for new, to try to attract new, we would, I mean, I'm not meaning to speak for you, but we would absolutely take care of our current
Yeah,
BIC
we wouldn't
teachers.
want to give someone that just signed up $3,000 and not give the ones that have been working for us in BIC for 10 years the
And-
same thing.
Just to give the board perspective, how many of those spots are not filled right now?
I don't mean to put anybody, Sharon, do you happen to know? If you'll give us just a few minutes, they're going to get online and find it for you. But I think the principals, if you just that are in the room, can look at you and probably with a nod tell you BIC teachers are some of the hardest teachers across the board at all age levels for us to find.
And that's just a signing bonus, one time, or recurring?
I would suggest it to be one time, and once again, this is just something I'm putting before you as a suggestion. What I talked to Mr. Miller about is my idea would be maybe 500 up front, 500 at semester, and 2,000 at the end of the year if they're in good standing and complete the year with us.
Sheila, remind me on annual stipends for the BIC teachers. Remind me what that number is.
2,500.
25. So if we hired, if I came in and was a BIC teacher next year, if this passes, you're proposing that $2,500 stipend they would get anyway, right,
Yes.
as being a hard-to-fill position, and then an additional $3,000 for the hiring and
Yes,
retention.
sir. That's what
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
proposing.
Here, Angie. Oh, just going back in order. Do you? Yeah, so now I think now is time where if you've kind of following along here, what are questions you have, what ideas do you have? I'm going to offer this. There's a lot of puts and takes here, right? There's a lot of moving parts in this thing that are very complex. I mean, I'm having trouble myself. And so what I'm going to do is after tonight, we'll take input. There'll be opportunities for you to provide input. Have 3 trustees take this off, look at it, move some parts around, come back with some ideas to see what might fit, right? But to do that with the input from the board. And so it was just a way that we thought might be able to address it, given it's a very multidimensional set of inputs this year. So let's just go around and have some discussion now, and then we can figure out if that's a good plan forward.
Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation. My head is kind of full right now. But just to kind of go through my thoughts, I'm all about raises, and, Lord knows our staff have done an outstanding job, and the work they've put in, the hard work and effort, and just the trying times, just not even in trying times, just daily times. They do an outstanding job and deserve a 20% raise, actually. But, of course, that's not going to happen. But anyway, and it just baffles me always, so I'm just going to throw it out there, where a 10-year teacher or 15-year teacher, they're almost making what a new teacher makes. That's crazy. But anyway, that's another discussion as well. So to kind of go through here, I am not really interested in the benefits raise, whatever the increase. I'm not really interested in that. If maybe my fellow board members can market me on that, maybe. 2% was where I was kind of landing, just looking at it. But what I don't want is I don't want this to be where, okay, we've got ESSER 3 funds, we can just give it all the way, because ESSER 3 is not going to be here, and I don't want to plan on that money. I want to use it where we can use it, and if we've got extra money and whatever, I don't want to take it from other funds and then not have it later on. So I want to plan for that, especially as our recapture rate continues to increase. We're going to have to plan for that as well. Or unless Dr. Bonner says we can find some more kids somewhere, rally them up. Yeah. I am in favor of the $15 increase. I feel that, they work just as hard as everyone else, and, I think you could get a job at Buc-ee's for the same amount of money for the work that they do. So I am in favor of that. The 10 to 15-year teacher, I would like a little more information on that, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to just give increases just because. I feel that, just like I work, I have a full-time job, and my raises are done on merit and the work that I do, not on just because I'm there and I've been there for 10 years. I get raises based on my performance and the work that I provide, and I feel that the district should do the same thing to the education that you're providing children. So I don't know what that looks like, if it's a study or something. I don't know. What else was there? The retention payment, I wouldn't be opposed to that, but just kind of looking at the amount of, the retention payment for the BIC signing, is that or the other, just the retention? Two different things, right? The one time for all staff. So just kind of looking at it, what did you say it was? It's...
It would be $3.2 million if we did 500, If we did 750, which is what we did this year for most, it's 5 million. And then if we did 1,000, it's 6.5 million.
Yeah, so kind of looking at that, I mean, if you didn't do that, we might as well give a 3% raise to everybody. I mean, we're kind of the same thing. So, you know, I'd almost rather go for their TRS and give them the 3% raise and, you know, call it a day. That's kind of my thought on there instead of the retention payment. Then the big bonus, I am all in favor of that, of giving them a signing on bonus for our big teachers, which I do think are our hardest teachers to provide for. Is that it, or did I run through all of these?
The only one I think.
The permanent subs.
No, I've already done that, but the stipends for
Okay.
advanced degrees.
The advanced degrees, again, I'd like to do a little, I'd like to have some, you know, maybe a TRS study or a study on that as well to kind of look at that.
Thank you, Ms. Cox.
Mrs. Hassett?
If I could just add real quick, there are 38 open BIC positions, just BIC. So I told you there are 8. Oh, I'm so sorry. She's doing this and I added them up. That certainly changes things. Thank you for the clarification. 8.
That's why you're not working in finance.
She did this and I just saw it as 30. I'm sorry. Rosemary, you will not hire me.
Just 8 is not much better for that position. You're going to struggle to find 8 good ones between now and the beginning of school.
I actually, much to Miller's chagrin, am in favor of the 3% raise. This year has been a struggle, and I think it's a good time to spend a little extra money. The 10 to 15 years, I actually think that we need to make sure that the 10 to 15-year teachers are in alignment with the rest of the teachers in the district. So I'm in agreement. The alignment for the pay grades is a good idea. And that, if we just do the 3%, the 10 to 15 year, and then the pay grade alignment, that's about $6 million. And the big teachers for sure. We need to make sure that we fill those 8 positions, and maybe that would help fill those 8 positions that we have and keep them all year long. I really like your idea of the large chunk of it being kept at the end of the year just to make sure that they stay. That's a great idea. I'm not sure about the extra bonus, retention bonus. I'm usually the kind of person who wants to put it into the salaries. I think that it's great to get it at Christmas. It really is. But overall, over the life of the teacher, it's good to have them make sure that they get it in the TRS. I'm not as interested right now with the master's degree, advanced degree stipend. If we're going to do a stipend, I'd much prefer to do all of the stuff, just because of the year that we've had with COVID. I think it's crazy. I think that's probably all. I do have a question for you on your chart, though. You had, another page, the overview of the salary benefit premium increase. That was really just the employee only. And we have more people that are employee and family.
Yes, we do. We just focused on that one because that is the one that predominantly more people use.
We have more just single employees than we do? We do? Awesome. Okay, so that's still the representation of most of it, or a larger chunk, okay, of the 70% who take it. Okay. I think I had another question. No, Dr. Roger answered it earlier while he was speaking, and I think I should have flagged him with the lovely flags that Mrs. Riggle gives us, and I didn't. Just 1 second, so sorry. Yep, that's all I had.
So, Ms. Hassett, if you don't mind, I just want to make sure I'm trying to keep this clear. So, raising contributions for health insurance, I think that was a no.
That was a no. I
And
prefer to do it in
then
salary.
giving a market adjustment for those 10 to 15 was a yes.
Yes, sir.
Then on percent raise you said 3%, which meant you'd rather do 3% and not the one-time or retention, just put it into TRS, right? And then the stipends, that was a no, and.
No, the instructional support?
Well,
The
I'm-
big instructional
yeah,
support was yes.
I had it out of order, but the instructional support was yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Sells?
Are you just wanting our opinions, or are we able to ask questions? Okay, okay. And this is just for the board's, the board's benefit. Who sets that survey information in our competitive market rate? Who sets that list? Any districts, and are there any districts on here that our employees see themselves aligned to that are not listed on here?
Those districts were recommended to us by TASB in the initial study in 12-13. We've made a couple of minor adjustments to that, but they base that on districts because they work with all of them that they think are our most competitors, and most of them obviously are in our area. But that's really good.
And who submits those, the TASB 21-22 preliminary district survey of pay increases? Does the benefit office submit those?
Tim submits, about 10 years ago, it used to be maybe 5 or 6 surveys, and it has morphed into about 15 now. He is constantly completing a survey, but we're also a member of their Data Central, and so by him completing that survey, it also allows us to get a lot of data from Data Central, from TASB, but Tim is doing that.
Okay. And let me see if I had more notes. The instructional support piece, what do the other districts do in that 32, 33, 34?
It really varies greatly. There is one district in our area that only has one pay grade, and they pay all of their paraprofessionals $15. I'm correct in that, right? And then there are others that have even more delineations than we have now. So it really is a district decision. I think the key for us is, I think, Christy, you said it, or maybe Angie, that, you know, when they can go to Buc-ee's and get a job making $13 or $14 an hour, we aren't going to get them in our classroom, and that's what we're hoping this allows us to do.
Okay. And do you know how many employees we have at the 32 and the 33? Because I'll be honest, if I was at the 34 and you're not going to increase, they're staying at the 15.
They'll get the 3% or the 2% or the 3%, but yes.
But so will the others, or will the others just be bumped up to the 15?
So he's looking at the number, but if we set the minimum at 15, then we need to give them the increase, because if we don't and we hire in a minimum of $15, then we've just given an employee who has one or at least 1 year experience the same pay as someone coming in with 0 years of experience. So once you set the minimum, whatever that minimum is, we need to still give those staff members that increase so that our minimum is still a minimum at 0 years of experience.
So Sheila, in looking at the numbers earlier, where if you took the $15 an hour adjustment and it across the board, and it was $900,000, did that take into consideration that $900,000 that they would get a % increase?
That is considered in the overall numbers of the percentage increase.
So the $900,000 we have here on the bump increase for that takes all of that into consideration?
The 855 or whatever that number, I know you're using 900,
Yeah.
which it's, it's
Okay.
fine, is just increasing everyone to the $15 minimum. And then the $3.5 million per percentage is taking all employees
Gotcha.
into account.
I got you. Okay.
Separately.
So it's covered in here. It's not something that, okay, got it.
Okay. I agree with the increase because I think that it's needed. I have trepidation because of the fact that if I was an employee making the 15 and yet I wasn't getting an increase that somebody at the 12, I want to make sure that all those employees in the 32, 33, 34 feel like that they're doing comparable job if we're going to bump part of them up to the 15 and leave the other at the 15. Do you understand? I don't want to make employees feel unappreciated, and I think that that's my concern with that.
Yeah,
Although I feel like that the 32 and the 33s, we should have done this years ago, but, yeah, right.
Yeah, I think also, Ms. Sells, and this is a question for the HR people, but I think if we're talking about hard to fill, the 32s and the 33s are harder to fill than the 34s.
Okay.
And so we're just trying to level the playing field, and everyone's going to get a percentage raise, whatever y'all decide. We just want the rest of it, the base, to be all the same.
Right. And in my PTA days, I know that there were the 32s and 33s that I would meet on campuses, and those didn't stay very long, usually. So,
And that's also, we've talked throughout, since I've been here, the number of positions that remain unfilled. And we averaged about 30 paraprofessional positions that remained unfilled this entire year. Those are primarily in that 32, 33 range.
okay. Okay. And
Well, if I could, maybe the messaging around this is that we're consolidating pay grades in instructional support. And that happens to be at $15 an hour. But we're consolidating the job codes, or whatever the function. And if the board gives a raise, you'd get a raise against that. So those are two-step things, right? One you could do, right? Because it's not a raise, it's a consolidation, or consolidation. The second is a raise, which we do. And I think that messaging addresses some of that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, appreciate that. And so going back, just to go down the list, I'm not really interested in the benefit increase because of the TRS. I think that that's important to our staff and our teachers. I'm in favor of the 3%, the 10 to 15. Did we not, a few years ago, take everybody back to a midpoint? And I didn't have time to go back and look up everything this afternoon. But did we not? So where did the right? So why is that not? Do y'all make the delta in the comparison? Okay.
One of the things about that is whatever you set your starting rates at each year, if they're not in an exact alignment with everyone else, as that year grows into second, third, it starts getting farther apart. This is pretty common, and that's why you realign every 3 or 4 years. You look at that.
Okay. One other question that reminded me. I would like to see I'm okay with that, and I'd like to see maybe more information, I guess, but I'm okay with that. I don't fully understand. I understand the answer. It's hard to wrap your mind around when you feel like that you've done what you needed to do, but here we are, and so is this going to be a cycle that, we're on?
Would the TASB study address some of that?
Yeah.
I mean, it would. Another thing is, if you notice the new teacher salary that I gave you is what it would be if it was a 2% or if it was a 3%. If we stick to that, so if the board determines that we're going to give a 2% increase and we stick to that starting salary that's listed there, or a 3% and we stick to that salary, then we're keeping our scale pure. What happens sometimes, I'm not saying it happened historically here, but what happens sometimes is Tim knows that, a compensation person knows that, and then there's somebody like me that's saying, you don't want to advertise with a starting salary of, $56,295. I want to advertise with a starting salary of $56,500 or $57,000. That looks better on paper, and so then you throw the scale off by doing something like that. And so I've committed to sticking to that number, and that really helps maintain the structure. It's all well-intended, but it can cause us some issue.
Okay. And that led me to another question. On the Lewisville ISD teacher turnover that you pulled, do all of those leave for other districts for teaching positions, or do they leave for promotion? And can we even pull that out?
So yes, Forecast 5 gives us a lot of information like that. We are able, through this system, to pull a lot of information about teachers, not about staff altogether, but about teachers. To be completely honest with you, Melissa and I are just starting to look at this data. And thank you to Mark Youngs for telling us that we had it. It is a year lag. So all of the information that we're looking at is 1 year delay, but it is able to tell you, the data is able to tell you not only if they left the profession, but if they left for another district, what district they're what they're leaving for, and you're able to see a lot of trends in that as well.
Okay, because I'm just wondering if a lot of our phenomenal employees at 5 to 10, if we're not, and that's something for the board to have in consideration, is if we've got those employees that are qualified to go and be an AP or principal in another district, how can we work to keep them in our district? And that was my only concern, my one question around that.
Sure.
So that kind of falls in that. So, okay, going back, 3% in favor. I'm okay with the 10 to 15. Big teacher for sure. The retention bonus, I don't know where I fall on that. I'm not opposed to that. But if we do the 3%, I don't know where I fall within that scale. Benefits, no. Stipend, the BIC, yes, I'm in favor of the BIC. Retention. Stipend, the advanced degree, I would like to wait until we do a TASB study on that. And I'll tell you why I'm in favor of the 3% and the retention. I think it's important for those here around the board, and I've said this already at one point today to somebody, but it's important for me as a board of trustees that when I go to Austin or I talk to my legislator, I want to be able to sit here and say, I've done my part for our teachers and our staff. Now do yours. So I'll end on that note. Okay.
Oh, Ms. Sells, just to make sure because I've missed something, the minimum hourly rate for instructional support staff,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Even if there needs to be phone calls to those people to make sure that they understand. I don't want there to be misunderstanding, and I want those people to know how important they are to what we do in this district.
If we move that forward, we'll do our best to make that a win-win for everyone.
Mrs. Prosnick?
So I do want to clarify something on the salary schedules. If we're going to raise the minimum, are we also raising the maximum? Right. I mean, I just wanted to make that clear. I think that was kind of something that was lost in the discussion of just where it started. That's what I figured. I am for the 3%. I am for the alignment because I just think it puts us back in alignment. I am for the pay grade, the combinings of the pay grades. I'm a yes for the BIC teachers. I agree with my fellow trustees. I want to see what the stipends are. I did have a question about advanced degrees. So if I'm an AP, I already have my master's degree, but I have a PhD. Do I get a stipend on top of that, or is the stipends only for teachers?
Anyone in the district gets the doctorate stipend.
Okay.
The only people that get the masters are those in that TC pay grade, the teachers, nurses, librarians. The other positions that are in the administrative scale, when TASB does that, it's assumed that that position requires it and it's built into the salary.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of see if that fell into that. And then I think, did I answer all the questions? retention bonus. I do think that needs to be looked at. I'm not opposed to it, and maybe it needs to be specific, maybe for our instructional aides. I don't know, but I would like for it to be looked at.
Dr. Bonner?
So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep up, I apologize. So, I don't think you mentioned about the district's contribution for health insurance, and if you did.
No, I said I was not in favor of
Okay,
that.
so-
And I did do, just for giggles, I did do the numbers for the 49%. If we paid it in full, it would be 1.736832. That's what it'd be if we paid for those 49%. The 69% that were the 4,523 employees. That would be that. And I agree. I'd much rather give them the money to go towards TRS.
And so you are in favor of the instructional support staff minimum, which I had that. So, Ms. Prosnick, on the retention one time about maybe for smaller specific groups.
Yeah, maybe for
but-
smaller or years, or I just think that, I don't think it needs to be $1,000 for
Yeah.
everybody.
And I think you said, but you'd be willing or probably want to wait till there's a study. I just would want to make it clear for anyone. Did you say on that?
No, a study on the stipends for the advanced degrees, what
Okay,
I wanted
so-
to wait for the
So
study
not on the retention?
No,
Okay.
on retention, I'm not,
Okay.
I'm
All
not
right.
in, full in
Good.
one camp or another.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Bonner?
Dr. Rogers, I'm going to go straight by the PowerPoint. Help you out a little bit there. It's good to talk about compensation and benefits tonight and hear the positives around the table for our employees who have just concluded a year unlike any other, period, in the story. If there's a year to take care of that, this is the year. Okay, so with that, I'll start with something I would not propose, which is the benefit increase as a health care increase. As we've just generally discussed around the table, that's better off paid as salary. That gives the employee the flexibility to actually put it in a health savings account and realize some tax savings. So you can make it if it's $500, you can make it $600. So that's what I would propose there. Market adjustment for teachers in the 10 to 15 experience level. I came to the table tonight not favoring that, but you all have changed my mind. I would favor that. I do want to say that, and Tim, you steer me right if I'm going wrong here. I'm going to make a statement. The green column is a comparison against the market average. So when we look at 10 years and 15 years, they're at the 98th percentile, approximating 99. So that's 99% of market average, which is half, right in the middle. So if we look at all the years of experience there, and this is the point I'm wanting to make, a comprehensive point, if we look at all those teacher salaries, whatever the year, they're all around 100%, which is the 50th percentile in our comparison group. So over the last 4 or 5 years or so, we've slipped from the 75th percentile approximate to the 50th percentile. And I think the work we need to do tonight and next week is to begin the process of getting back up closer to that 25th percentile. On teacher salaries only, because I didn't look at the rest of it, as you go from year 0, it's $500-$600 for that delta between the 50th percentile and the 75th percentile. Of course, the longer you're an employee, it gets a little bit larger, $2,000, somewhere in there. So I think it's work we can continue to do over the next couple, 2 or 3 years to quote, catch back up. So I'm excited to see that this evening. So that's a yes on the market adjustment, please. Percentage raise for salaries, I would be in favor of 3%. The retention piece is a little bit more difficult for me, at least. I think 500 is more appropriate rather than 1,000, and that helps the district maintain a little bit more in line with budgeting while still providing additional monies to employees for salaries. So I would be in favor of $500 on the retention item. Fully agree with the collapse of all the instructional support schedules, and would just note, and Tim, thank you for this salary schedule. Ms. Sells is absolutely right that we need to be very cautious with the instructional support 34 schedule and the employees that are therein. But in looking at those job titles, Ms. Sells, I just want to assure you that that's a very small universe of employees. Tim, do you remember how many folks that is on that IS 34? And then what about 32 and 33? Yeah, so it's a small, so I think your suggestion could be attained for sure. So I would be in favor of collapsing that to help out. And then on the stipend, I think we need to do an audit to make sure we are not doing exactly what you guarded against, eating up the delta between those positions with the stipend and promotional activities or positions that we don't want to collapse that margin. And then on the BIC, I would agree that a stipend for retention and attraction is not unreasonable.
Thank you, Dr. Bonner, and I think I got it all right this time.
Okay.
Fifth time's the charm.
I am not an advocate of TRS contribution, although I am very grateful that FBS has come back with what we've wanted for years, which is to see our TPA find some savings for our employees and hopefully good products. And so I think that's a big win for them and for you guys in that decision. So thank you for making that decision. I would be for 3%. I am for the collapsing of the job grades or 32, 33, 34 into a $15 amount. I'm for the market adjustment. We did that before. I think it makes sense. The BIC, certainly no on the stipends or until I study. The reason I think this needs more analysis, I do think we should do a retention. And I think what we've got here is there's some confliction around this, right? So if Angie wants 2%, and she'd consider that. If she moved to 3%, she wouldn't have that. Christy, I think you wouldn't go.
I'm not in favor of 1,000. I just don't, we're already sitting at a large deficit and we're adding to it tonight, and
Right.
it gives me a little heartburn.
Great.
Yep. But a lower number I'd be willing to evaluate.
Well, and that's where I'm at. I like the little incentive there. I mean, it's not $6.6 million of spend, but if you guys could come up with something, I think at that point, I don't think we need a board, a separate committee to kind of move things around and trying to figure out what options are, given what we've heard here tonight. We got fairly decent alignment. We're never going to be fully aligned on something this complex. This is one of our more complex times, I think, that when you look at the dimensions here. But I think we can avoid that step. And if you guys just take into consideration, what would it be? Is it going to go to everybody? Do you want to step it so that you say, Dr. Rogers, a certain amount of money, you're going to cap it at that, and so you're going to, some get 500, some get 750. I don't know. If you guys want to ideate on that and come back with a recommendation for Monday.
Well, I'm a little confused on that, Mr. Miller, because half the board said, I think, Ms. Cox, Ms. Hassett, and Ms. Sells, and Ms. Sells was sort of probably preferred just a 3% instead of, but said, or a question mark.
I just wanted discussion on that level. I wasn't
But if you're going to
happy with 1,000.
If you're going to form a board committee between now and Monday, why would they not? I mean, I can make a recommendation, but, I mean, what's the purpose of the board committee?
No, they wouldn't do it. You would just make a recommendation. We don't need them to do it.
Okay, so the majority of the board wants me to make a recommendation on a one-time. I didn't get that, so.
I guess my feeling would be that if we're going to put it for administration to do it, I want an A and a B. I want, you can do this, or you can do this. That's my preference, which is
Yeah.
what I think the committee was going to do. So.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to do it. I just wanted to make sure, there was talk of a board committee, and so, is this in lieu of a board committee, is
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
I promise you, I'm more than happy to make the recommendation.
I think there were a bunch of questions around the
Yeah.
retention bonus, like, well, what would that look like? And, there was pretty good alignment around everything else, one area notwithstanding. And so in that case,
I want to
there's
take one more bite at the apple on retention bonus, whatever we're going to call it, and benefits. We all agreed that we don't need to do the benefit, and I think that's borne on the fact that the district's contribution is at least as high as the market that we compare ourselves to. In my mind, I had connected those two. If we don't do the one, then the $500 is what I have fixed in my mind is reasonable to make up for that, and it gives the employee flexibility to apply it towards health costs if they so choose to do so. So I see those two as connected.
No, I understand that, yeah, so,
I would agree with Dr. Bonner, because I believe it came, and I'm frantically trying to get to the page, but I think it was like $484 a year. Yeah, $384, excuse me, $384, and after taxes, I think that would cover that increase for, the majority of our employees.
I can handle it.
I wanted to go back really quick to something Dr. Bonner had said about the 50% of market comparisons. I think that's a great idea to go back and study, and we'll do that with TASB. But for me, also what we need to look at are those districts who are above us, who have a higher tax rate. Because I think that's going to be the delineation. Some of these districts, Frisco, they've done a TRE, and they're able to do things with that TRE money that we probably won't be able to do without it. So I think when we look at those things, I think those have to be considered in the evaluation. So
I think that's a good thought to have that as a variable that you study for sure.
I would also just add that for HEB, they have the highest rate of waivers because they expect for their staffing rate, it's at a much higher rate than what we do. So I like to your point that when we're looking at those comparisons, I want some of those outliers with a TRE and with how HEB structures their stuff. I think that's a much more apples to apples comparison than just saying that they pay this much more. They also have a lot more kids per teacher.
Okay, so the last slide is just a timeline for next steps. So we need to finalize this discussion and ask the board to make a decision this upcoming Monday night. I appreciate all the input tonight. Then July 25th, of course, is a big day for us because that's annually when we get our certified property value rolls. Fingers crossed. And then, of course, August is a busy, busy month as far as finalizing our budget. Our budget will continue to get better. It always has. That's the norm between now and August. We have an August 4th budget workshop, and then a special meeting on August 30th, and that is for y'all to adopt the budget and to set the tax rate. So, which has to be done before the end of August. So that's all we have, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. I think that it was a good dialogue. Thank you for all the work you guys put into this and some of the changes that you made. I think in 2012 or so, we paid $30,000 to do a TASB study, maybe something like that, as part of the action from the employee service audit it'd be nice to get that done this year so that next year we're addressing some things. And then I think to Ms. Cox's point, and I know I've sent a couple emails this year that on pay for performance, right? There are some districts that are looking at that, and I'm a big believer that, we are in a system where pretty much you can be good, mediocre, or great. And depending where you are in that job grade, you get paid the same. And if you're just good enough to keep your contract, you can be good enough versus a great employee. And I think there's value in looking at how we incentivize our teachers. I think even Dr. Moses said to us 3 or 4 years ago, there are certain positions you're going to have to start looking at compensation for to get them because they're the creme de la creme. And
Are you suggesting the actual TIA plan that's based on STAR, though?
I don't know I don't know what the pay for performance would be.
It's
I'm
based on
I'm
STAR
not suggesting
currently.
it on
And I'm not a big fan.
anything in particular at this time. I'm not saying pay on STAR data. I'm saying that some type of pay for performance system. I mean, really, if you got somebody that's just barely made it into their contract renewal, then why should they get 3% plus a retention bonus, and they're in a market adjustment rate? I mean, but that's the way it is today. I think there's just got to be some consideration, even if we exclude it, some consideration for how we would address employees from a compensation perspective that are not performing. And we've talked about it for a lot of years. I think that, I'd like for us not to be talking about it again, except for the fact that, hey, we just determined that it's absolutely not possible to do by law, or these are the negative things in doing it. That's all.
Yeah, and it's certainly something we can talk about. There are a lot of negatives attached to doing it. I promise you, as someone as old as I am and saw what career ladder did among teachers 25, 30 years ago, and I know Dr. Bonner experienced some of that, and, the bottom line is you've got to figure out what are you going to use to make those decisions. That's the hard part. And for the state, it's the teacher incentive allotment, it's STAR. We certainly don't want to use that. And so what criteria you're going to use is really the hardest part of developing that.
If there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 8:22 p.m.
Thank you all very much.